We should be live right now.
Live.
Kyle, this is
We're
another
live. First
happy
episode of the Code Question of the Day podcast,
absolutely. Happy New Year.
2026.
Absolutely. This is our first one of many because this year we're going to get it we got a good plan in place and we've got a lot of great questions. We've got the 2026 code that just was released. We've got the 2029 everybody is working on. There's a ton of stuff going on.
A lot going
Absolutely.
on in our worlds right now. Should we
Yes,
start
there
with some
is.
introductions?
Yeah, you lead off, please.
All right. So, Kyle Krieger with NECA, Executive Director of Codes and Standards, and excited to kick off 2026 CQD podcasts with my main man, Tommy Shortpants.
Tom, Tommy Shortpants here. Thomas Domitrovich from EATON. Looking forward to again with my buddy Kyle, working on another code question of the day, getting into digging in, going a little bit deeper. Kyle, I think is what our plan is. The questions are out there, and we'll field questions as well as people tune into our live sessions, and we can get some dialogue going. I can see the dialogue here. I'll if anybody's out there watching and giving us notifications or questions or comments, I'll try to throw those up on the board, and we will have a another great season of learning the code.
So what do we got for a topic today, Tom? You want to
Oh,
throw the can you
I'm
throw
gonna,
the Code Question of the Day site up on the screen or
I am. So what I'm gonna do is, so we just to let everybody know, the best way to get to this. Is there a shortcut URL, Kyle, or anything like that?
so if it NECAnet.org or if you just Google search Code Question of the Day, it's like the first thing that pops up is a link to NECA's Codes and Standards website. Or if you just Google search NECA Codes and Standards, um, it'll take you right to it. And there's a nice archive there of all 27
Yes,
years worth of code questions and answers. Some, depending on who was doing the code questions and answering at the time, are unique and insightful, and all of them are unique and insightful. But you know, in the beginning, it was a lot of you need to hire a licensed electrician to get this done.
yeah,
Like almost like it was the handyman hotline, right? Um, but uh, but at the end of the day, it's all about education. And if that's what we got to do to get the general public and the industry educated, then we'll do it, right? Sometimes the
absolutely,
only answer when you know you're dealing with somebody that might not be qualified is to say, hey, your best bet is to touch base with a licensed contractor in your area, right? Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, every
Yeah.
every weekday, new
Oh, and
question
people,
and
and
the
so
day before answer.
yeah, and right here on the website there is a link to say submit a code question. And then there's the Code Question of the Day podcast, which our audio will be available on that podcast, right? So, and I'm not
Yep.
sure if they're doing the video or not, but I know the audio is going to be there. We have this YouTube channel, so people can go and watch these and get. And I think the cool thing that we're doing is giving a little bit more depth and reasoning, more so that you can do in the text, right?
Yeah, you really have to take the questions at face value when they come in, for that are submitted, because you know as well as I do, you can't answer for every scenario, right? So you got to
Yeah,
go with the information you have or you're provided with, and then make a best case, you know, based on that information. You could end up with a 10-page answer if you tried to foresee every possible scenario that they might walk into, and sometimes it's a rabbit hole that you got to fight against going down because it's easy to get caught up in that. But that's why
exactly.
we have this platform. We can start to explore some of those other situations or other the the common misconceptions or the common pitfalls that we see or we hear from our AHJ friends over at the IAEI or IEC or NFPA. All those folks, they get a lot of these same questions and pitfalls. So we can explore that a little deeper here.
Absolutely. And today's question, we're going with, I mean, it's this came in apparently on January 9th, 2026. And the question is, hi CQD, is GFCI protection required for a hardwired 208-volt hand dryer in a commercial bathroom? If so, can you give me the code section? And it's signed Sam B.
Yeah.
Which,
So that one brings up a lot of different interesting points, and I think when you look at that question, the key takeaways when I saw it, that I jumped out at me right away were one, commercial, right? Right off the bat,
yeah,
establishes it as other than a dwelling unit, which is huge for the GFCI world because there's two sets of rules in 210.8.
mm-hmm,
210.8A covers dwelling units, 210.8B covers other than dwelling units. And I think that that's our first step, right? What's the applicable article here? Um, the other piece is hardwired. They're very intentional in saying it was hardwired. Um, and that triggers a whole different approach. Because if you look at 210.8B for other than dwelling units, the rules established there and the list established there is for receptacle connections, receptacle outlets,
that's right.
not hardwired. And we have a threshold set up that's set by those for those receptacle connections. So the
Yeah,
thresholds that we have voltage and amperage thresholds, and it's unique by the type of system, the phase of the system. So, for all 125 volt through 250 volt receptacles supplied by single phase branch circuits rated 150 volts or less to ground and 50 amperes or less. So single phase, 125 through 250 volts, 150 volts to ground or less, and 50 amps. And then three phase branch circuits rated 150 volts to ground or less, 100 amperes or less. So threshold there is clear. Now, did they specify in the question if it was single phase or three phase?
what he said was no. Oh, he said 208-volt hand dryer in a
So we
commercial
assume it's
bathroom.
three phase, right?
Yeah, yep.
But it's under the 150 volts to ground or less. And it's under the ampacity threshold, but it's not a receptacle connection. So 210.8B wouldn't apply, right?
That is
So
correct.
where else could we look for that
Well,
information?
so the way 210.8 is laid out, you have, like you said, A and B are receptacles only. C is your crawl space lighting outlets. D is specific appliances. So that would be the other place because a hand dryer would be an appliance, right? An appliance doesn't mean it's only a stove or a cooktop or
Well,
range.
let's talk about that for a second. What designate? Because this came up. You remember way back when vending machines first popped up in 422.5A on the
Yep,
list, and as being required to be GFCI protected.
yep.
And then everybody said, well, what's a vending machine? And I think there was a definition of vending machine for a while. And if you looked at a vending machine, the definition that we had in the NEC, um, there's a lot of things that met that, right?
Yep,
The definition of a vending machine, and one of the ones that everybody pointed out was an ATM. You pay money for a service, an automated service, right, at one of those locations. And an ATM usually charges you a fee, even though that fee and the product you're getting is your own money. Now we
mm-hmm.
have ATMs that would potentially have to be required to be GFCI protected, and is that a security issue and all these other things? But do we have a set definition of appliance, or how do we get to
Uh,
what's an appliance, what's not an appliance?
So if I look if you go to the Article 100 definitions, appliance is defined as utilization equipment, generally other than industrial, that is normally built as a standardized size or type and is installed or connected as a unit to perform one or more functions. And I'm getting this out of NFPA link. I'm doing a plug. I always do this. I love NFPA link. If you don't have it, you got to get it. So NFPA link gives you access to the code, many editions, not all editions, many editions of the NEC. All right, so got that out of the way. But
So
there
what
is a
about the
definition.
listing? What about the listing? Can something meet the definition of an appliance? And I only bring this up because that's the road we went down with the vending machines. Ultimately, it said it's going to be on the label, the listing label. It'll be listed as a vending machine if it's a vending machine. Do appliances get listed as an appliance? Is there a specific category code for general appliances versus, you know, specific types of appliances?
There
I'm putting you on the
is.
spot here. I don't know if we didn't talk about this at all ahead
No,
of
but
time,
that's
but
that's good. There is a standard, and I'm just looking for. You know what I always do is I go to UL Solutions, right, and they've got a really nice website. There's an IEC 60335-1 is the standard for safety of household. That's not it. There is a standard for household appliances, and I'm on their website. They've got uh, they've got some workshops and whatnot, and I'm looking. Is it UL 4200? Is battery tested labeling household and similar electrical appliances. So 60335-1 seems to be, and let me throw this up. So I'm on the UL Solutions website, and they have IEC 60335-1, the standard for safety of household and similar electrical appliances. Um, and oh, and the other place is Product IQ. There's
yeah,
another
product
great
IQ.
reference. Yeah, so let me go to Product IQ, and I think I got to log in. So here's another plug. So here's the nice thing about this dialogue is these are resources that are available to everybody, right? So Product IQ is a great place to do some homework. So if I type in appliance, I have the keyword is appliance. There's a category, there's a company name, there's a file number and a location, but there's GE appliances. What I'm looking for is the guide information. Looking for guide information. I wonder if I can type in guide info. There we go. Information technology, audio video. That's not what I want. I want appliances. What was the standard number? 60335-1. So let's type that in. 60335-1. See what we get. Switches for appliances. Let me click on that, and that should list other related product categories. Appliance switches, general use snap switches, pendants, devices. These are all wiring devices. Air conditioners. That's another type of an appliance, right? Gardening
So this sounds like
appliances.
this could be a good question for one of our UL representatives on panel 17 or panel 2 or both, right?
Well, you know what I think, here's what I think it tells us. Here's what I think. What I'm seeing here is let me go back to the definition. The definition says utilization equipment, generally other than industrial, that is normally built in a standardized size or type, etc. Right? Well, when I'm looking at searching Product IQ for, I just went to 60335-1, and there's a lot of references here to different types of equipment, Kyle, and I think all of these are appliances, but they're listed to their own individual standards.
Okay.
There's it's
So for
so
sake of argument, we could probably say a hand dryer, an electric hand dryer is an appliance. We're comfortable at meeting the definition in the, UL's category of an appliance. It's listed as an appliance most likely. Is
I
that
would
a
agree
safe
with that.
assumption?
Yeah, because there's a heaters, specialty heaters, probably a specialty heater. So I'm just looking in the product IQ. Um, they they have related standards. Hand dryers incorporating fans without heaters are covered under fans electric, GPWV. So that's a fan without a heater. So this individual didn't say whether, he just said a hand dryer. So there's different types of hand dryers. So I would say that it meets the definition of what an appliance is because it's very generic. The standard that it's built to is going to be determined by the type of appliance that it is, right?
Okay.
In this case, a hand dryer, because they have in here, they have under heaters specialty, they have charcoal igniters, embossers, hand dryer, pet dryer, stock tank heater, and then they have related products saying, well, if you have a hand dryer that doesn't have a heater as a part of it, that's listed under electric fans. Okay,
Hmm.
so I'm not seeing a specific appliance standard, but I see a generic term in the code that basically tells you, hey, if you are a if you are a device or a piece of equipment, utilization equipment that is other than industrial and normally built in a standardized size or type and installed or connected as a unit, and it performs one or more functions, hand dryer would do that. So I would call it an appliance.
Works
That's
for
how I
me.
get there.
So as we go on this journey, right?
Yep, yep.
It's other than dwelling units, it's hardwired, so 210.8B doesn't apply. So where else can we look for potential now that we've established it's an appliance? There's requirements for GFCI protection in 422, right?
Yeah. So there's 422, and then you got to think about the branch circuit that's supplying
Oh
the
yeah.
appliance. So 210.8D
So
would be your specific appliances, right? So, and in
right.
210.8, in 210.8D, again, I got an NFPA link up, which hopefully everybody has their membership to. It says GFCI protection shall be provided for the branch circuit or outlet supplying the following appliances rated 150 volts or less to ground and 60 amps or less. And the code question said 208 volts, didn't have an ampere value. So that's fine. If I go back, I have automotive vacuum machines, drinking water coolers, high pressure spray, tire inflation, vending machines, sump pumps, dishwashers, electric ranges, wall mounted ovens, counter mounted cooking units, clothes dryers, but not hand dryers. There's a difference, two different standards, two different types of equipment, and a microwave oven. Can you dry your hands in a microwave? Probably not. You probably couldn't get the door closed, could you?
Probably not. Yeah.
Yeah, probably
Yeah.
not a good idea. So, and same thing with a clothes dryer. So I would say there is nothing in 210.8D, but your journey hasn't stopped to your point, right?
Right.
What's the other spot for? You said 422?
422.5A, right? That gives us another list of appliances. And that sounds confusing, right? So if we have, why do we have appliances covered in 210.8D and 422.5A? Not so, I know I'm opening up a can of worms
You
here, but
just
it's
did.
it's worth discussing. If we've got, we
Yep.
got a lot of people that use this book, these rules, and there's a I hope there's a reason why it's in two spots. Is it, how does one know if they should be following the list in 422 or the list in 210 when it comes to GFCI protection for appliances?
And there is
What
a
would you say
difference.
is the demarcation line there? What's the cutoff?
So here's my opinion on this. What's the scope of 422? 422 says it covers electrical appliances used in any occupancy. It doesn't address the branch circuit at all, right? It covers the appliance. Now,
So for example, if I have an office space,
mhm,
right? And I wanted to put a soda vending machine in the hallway outside of the office, that could be an existing receptacle that I choose to plug that vending machine into. That's where the 422 appliance requirements come in because it has nothing to do with the branch circuit wiring
right.
initially, right? It's all about the appliance now. So
Because
because
you
I'm
don't
choosing
know.
to install a vending machine or place a vending machine, it's got to be GFCI protected.
Yeah,
right?
and you don't know where it's going to be plugged in. So the
Right.
appliance requirements should provide protection for the appliance and everything about the appliance, how I mount that appliance. And I would say that a lot of the requirements probably should be mirrored in the UL standard for appliances, because if I say all appliances need to be double insulated, or all appliances need to have a cord that is no longer than 6 feet or whatever, I'm making those requirements up. That's all a part of the listing for that appliance. Now, in
Well, and I think
422
it,
dot, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think it's important too to mention that in that same vending machine example,
Hmm.
new vending machines come with an integral GFCI, Class A GFCI protection device in the cord, right? So you could plug it
Yes.
into a non-GFCI protected branch circuit and receptacle and still comply with this requirement because 422.5B specifies the type and location of GFCI protection that's permitted, right?
So here's
Um,
that started that change when that went in. That change basically kicked off a steamroller of OMG, because when they put it in 422, as they should, they said this applies to an appliance, and 422 says now I have to have GFCI in the appliance, right? Because it's in 422. If I had it on a branch circuit, if I said all outside receptacles had to be GFCI protected, you plug that appliance, I don't care what vintage it is, you put it in and you plug it in on an outside circuit, then it's going to be GFCI protected. But they said, look, these appliances get moved a lot. So they
mhm.
wanted GFCI protection regardless of the vintage of the location. So they put GFCI protection in that cord and they made the requirements. Then it went into the standard. And then what they realized was when you put that Coke machine or Pepsi machine or whatever it is, or a gumball machine, and you put it up against the wall, the receptacles behind the machine, now the GFCI is no longer readily accessible.
Yeah.
So that created, then the guys on 422 were like, now what do we do? And everybody was like, I know inspectors were out there in the field, and I drove through Alabama with Donnie Cook, and we would pull over and we would take pictures of vending machines and to see how they were handling some of these, because he would go to a new installation and he would see a space between the vending machines and the receptacle. But then his comment was, well, I still can't get to that GFCI, so it's still not really accessible. So that presented a problem. And what they, in my opinion, what they should have done was try to address it in other areas of the code rather than the UL standard for the appliances, because then they created the list and they created these requirements to say, okay, no, you don't have to put it in the appliance. You could have it in the branch circuit, because if it's in the branch circuit, you're already covered.
So what
So,
if so that I guess that begs another question. Let's talk about the readily accessible piece. Why do GFCIs need to be readily accessible?
testing.
Testing, right? Because the
Yeah,
listing of those GFCIs requires testing, monthly testing,
that's
which
right.
everybody is diligent about. I know I test all my GFCIs once a month. I know you do, right? As
I
a
just did. I was down in my basement. I was down in my basement.
documented and everything.
I was trying to figure out which circuit, because my panel uh, descriptions aren't all inclusive, right? So they'll say I needed to turn a circuit off. So what I did was I just pressed the GFCI buttons and tripped them until the right one went off, and I'm like, okay, I just did my monthly test.
Yeah, for the first time since you moved into the house 18 years ago.
Hey, at least it got done, right?
So there is, it's important that we have where our GFCI devices are readily accessible. Well, so what
Yeah.
if, so now we have this product standard for vending machines that requires this cord to have an integral GFCI device on it.
Yep.
What if we know that that's likely not going to end up being readily accessible because they're going to push that vending machine into whatever nook that it's designed for, or they want to put
Yeah.
it there, and the cord's going to lay behind the vending machine. Likely the only way that you're going to even know it exists is if you're in the know in that type of stuff,
No.
let alone you'd have to pull the machine out to get to it, likely. So
Right.
as an electrical contractor, I decide, okay, well, to comply with the NEC, I'm gonna GFCI protect the branch circuit. That way the GFCI is back at the overcurrent device inside the panel board, and it can be tested at any time because it's readily accessible. Is it still a code violation because we've got the integrated GFCI device on that vending machine that's not readily accessible?
Wow. You know
You can
what?
have two levels of GFCI protection. It allows it in subdivision A, right? It says multiple
Yeah.
class A protected devices shall be permitted but not required. But
Yeah,
if
you're
one of
right.
them is still not readily accessible, it's still going to be an issue, right?
Yeah, for that one, that's not really accessible,
Potentially
but
still be an issue.
potentially, yeah. But you know what? That you bring up a very good point that 422, because there, there's a battle, there's a struggle that's going on between panel two, and I think this is panel 17, I think, or no,
Yeah, panel 17. Yep.
17. So panel 17 is wants to say we own the GFCI protection. Panel 2 says, well, we own the protection for the branch circuit and we use the appliance to identify which branch circuits, okay, should have GFCI protection. But the real crux of it again started with that appliance, the the vending machine, and the crux is that it's not really accessible. So technically, if they want a list of if the panel 17 and the appliance people say, look, we think these are important, they can have their list of appliances, which they do, and then they can say, look, these need to be GFCI protected, and oh, by the way, it can be in the branch circuit, and point back to 210.8D specifically. And then 210.8D, if the panel 2 people say, look, any new construction, any branch circuit that feeds these receptacles that are in the kitchen, the receptacles that are in the laundry, and also any branch circuits that serve these appliances or whatever equipment, we want those GFCI protected, then I don't think there's a conflict between 422 and 210.8.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the scope once again, right? Like you had started off by saying is the scope is the important piece here. And the scope of 210 is branch circuits under 1,000 volts AC, 1,500 volts DC. And the scope of 422 is the appliance.
Right.
So if we're, like you said, if panel two feels that branch circuits serving these appliances, that the protection should be at the branch circuit level, then those requirements belong in 210.
Right.
If regardless of the branch circuit being used, the appliance is such a nature that it creates a shock hazard that it should be GFCI protected regardless of the branch circuit.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that should be in 422.
I
And
I
then there
I
should be
like
some
it.
kind of tie pointing to the others, right?
I
To
like
one or
it.
the others.
I like it a lot. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. That makes
Well,
a
there
lot
is
of
an
sense.
informational note in 422.5A that points to 210.8 for branch
Yeah.
circuit outlet protection.
Yeah. And the debate. So here's where some people get confused, and I would say also with electric vehicles, and we'll get there, but it's the same discussion for both of these, where you say 422 is saying, look, I have a list of 7. If you go to 210.8D, they have a list of 12. So panel 2 added for branch circuit GFCI protection for branch circuits serving 12 appliances, and 422 has a list of only 7. So we added more. And some people think, well, wait a second, there's a difference. Panel the 422.5 should be the exact same list as 210.8D. And I'm not sure that that's true for the exact reason that you said,
Yeah, because
was
if
that
they're going to be the same for the branch circuit, then you don't need a list in 422.
that's true. Unless your intent is that these appliances need to have GFCI as a part of the appliance, right? It's just like that happens in vending machines. So if their intent is, and the reason they went to vending machines was because vending machines are put on trucks, moved everywhere, and they were causing electrocutions because of damage to the wiring and whatnot. You crimp a wire, you energize the frame, and you don't know where it's going to be plugged in. So they made that a part of the standard for the vending machine. The same question and reasoning, in my opinion, should be put to 422.5, saying, what appliance do we want GFCI as part of the appliance? Now, they can, like they do, is say, look, you can put it in the appliance or you can put it in the branch circuit, but their focus is on the appliance itself. And if their list is smaller because they said only these are the ones that are going to be transported, moved, have a failure, whatever, and panel two says, well, we're going to expand that to more because of failures that they're seeing of installed in place, that means the standard is not expected to change for those appliances that are identified in 210.8. 422 should be saying, we want the standards to be modified to include this shock protection. And there may be multiple ways to get that done.
And sometimes that's the nature of the NEC development process and product standard development process, right? One of them has got to set the tone, and then the other one follows suit, a chicken and egg type scenario.
Exactly. No,
so I
you're
think we've
exactly right.
established that a hardwired hand dryer in a commercial bathroom does not need GFCI protection, right?
That is correct.
Because it's not a receptacle. It's not in the list of appliances in 210.8D, and
Nor
it's not on the
422.
list of appliance 422.5A.
Yeah.
So I think we answered the question, the code. We talked about the code question enough, but this whole idea of GFCI protection, hardwired versus cord and plug connector or receptacle outlet, 210.8 versus 422.5, this presents a segue for something that was a pretty contentious topic during the 2026 revision, and that carried over into the technical meeting, and there were standards council appeals and everything related to GFCI protection of EV charging equipment.
Oh boy, yes. Now, yeah,
Right?
I forgot.
This kind of
Yeah,
falls into that same category a little bit, right? Or similar.
it
And
is
it's
similar.
worth talking about because of how polarizing this topic has been over the last 3 years for the folks in the code development world
And
and in enforcement and installation.
yep.
Manufacturers, everybody kind of has this, there's this struggle going on.
And I'll tell you, when it really started, when the struggle now for the EV thing especially, um, where that struggle started was when we created 210.8B because it didn't. Oh,
210.8B or F?
210.8. Think about this. So F is going to be in there too, but let's just speak to 210.8B as in Bob. Was never there all the time because the GFCI requirements for other than dwelling units was always covered in the back chapters. They created 210.8B for other than dwelling units. I think that goes back to the 90s sometime. I can't remember exactly which code cycle. And everything was hunky-dory because it was always 15 and 20 amp receptacles that were being protected. Okay? You had 210.8A was receptacles, you had B which was entered, which was new, but there were requirements back in say, chapter 7 and chapter 5 for like marinas and things like that, and they all jived because it was GFCI protection for receptacles. And then panel 2 went and did what you said earlier. They increased to outside of 15 and 20. They went up in amperage for the receptacles, and then they went up to the outlets. And then 210.8F hit the streets. Well, now you've got a 210.8 that is building out GFCI requirements. And you have these requirements in the back of the book that'll say, you must GFCI protect, and I'll use electric vehicles because this is a point of discussion. 625, I think I have up here. 625 says, 625.54 says all receptacles installed for the connection of electric vehicle charging shall have ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel. Okay, so that aligned with what 210.8b used to be, and it was, but it was always 15 and 20 amp receptacles, right? This is now all receptacles, so that does increase. It doesn't care what the ampere value is. But then what happens is now, and I chaired a task group, I think it was the 17 code. Does 625.54 negate all of 210.8? Okay. Does it get rid of 210.8F? Does it, because it doesn't specifically call out hardwired? Okay. It just tells you that all receptacles installed. Does that mean that 210.8F no longer applies? If I had a GFCI requirement for a specific appliance, does that mean that all of 210.8D doesn't apply? So we addressed this. We had a task group, and the task group basically said, look, if everything from chapters 5, 6, and 7, if they don't explicitly say the requirements of 210.8 whatever do not apply, and they have like this, which says receptacles have to have GFCI protection, that doesn't mean 210.8F is no longer applicable. It's still a requirement because it's a requirement for the outdoor outlets on dwelling units and those other three areas. Okay? So that debate is going on and has gone on, and probably will go on until you add clarity. And I'm hoping panel 12 adds clarity to the 625.54.
Well, I think there's going to be some relief coming in that regard. So with the restructuring of the NEC for 2029, 90.3 is not going to be the 90.3 that we've all grown up with and know and love, right? The
Right.
1 through 4 are general, 5 through 7 are modifying, amending, or supplemental, right? And the reasoning is because we're going to have all these chapters and we're going to have multiple general articles for different systems and things like that. So it's not going to be as cut and dry. And to be honest, 90.3 has always given us the roadmap, but depending on who you talk to, the rules get applied in a different way. But I 100% agree with you in I look at the 620 54, 625.54 as more of a supplemental language than amending or, modifying language, right? The general rule says in a dwelling unit, you got to install GFCI protection for outdoor outlets under these thresholds. The electric vehicle charging equipment GFCI requirement says, yeah, and EVSE cord and plug connected, regardless of the voltage, has to be GFCI protected. So I think there's more supplemental there. And where the relief is going to come in is because we're going to have this new structure. The correlating committee felt that there was a need there to address modifying rules. Otherwise, you're going to have purview getting stepped on by each different CMP every time we go through this. So if a code making panel wants to specifically modify a rule or eliminate a rule that's in the general requirements, it has to specifically call out that rule by section and say, what it is that this amends it, this deletes it, this does not apply to these systems, whatever, whether it's an exception or a rule. So there's a task group reviewing that, and hopefully there's going to be some style manual language that comes out of that, right? That says if we're going to modify a rule, here's the requirements for doing so to ensure that the purview of these panels does not continuously get stepped on by other code panels. Now, the correlating committee also has a responsibility there to make sure everybody's staying in their lane, right?
Yeah.
And that's easier said than done sometimes because it can appear that everybody's staying in their lane, and they're following the rules, and there's really not an action that the correlating committee can take. But when there's a blatant violation of pure purview or something to that effect, then the correlating committee can step in. But I think firming up some language in the style manual to address modifying requirements will help in that regard.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
but we still have this 2026 code the way it is, right? And in your opinion, in my opinion, 210.8F applies to EVSE installed outdoors at a dwelling unit,
Right.
and so does 625.54, right? I mean, they both apply.
Yeah.
And one
And
doesn't negate the other, or the 625 language doesn't negate the 210.f language. It's an addition to, it's supplemental, right? Or
hmm
it's in addition to what we have already there. It provides more, or a more restrictive, not necessarily a more, no, it is more restrictive because there's no voltage threshold or amperage threshold. It says all.
that's
So it
right.
is more
So
restrictive.
that's exactly right. So that's why it supplements and modifies. But now that's the receptacle requirements. Now, if I hardwire an EVSE piece of equipment and it's put on the outside of a house, it would need to be GFCI protected.
If
There's
it's
nothing.
60 amps or less, 150
Yes.
volts to ground or less, right?
Yes. But now, if because there's nothing in 625 that says you don't have to, and we have 210.8F, but now if I hardwire my EVSC in the garage where I do not have a outlet requirement for GFCI, it's just receptacles in a garage, then I would not have to GFCI protect the hardwired EVSE when it's in that garage.
So in the garage, hardwired, no GFCI protection. On the
Right.
outside of the garage, if I install it on the outside exterior wall of the garage, then I
Yeah.
would have to have GFCI protection.
Because everybody knows, Kyle, that the electrons are so smart. They know when they're inside that house that if there's a path to a human body, they just say, no, I can't go there because I'm in a garage.
Well,
Yep.
and if we start to think about it from a safety standpoint, you know, I don't know about you, but there's certain times of the year where you can't fit a bicycle in my two-car garage, let alone a car, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then what do? You run an extension cord outside and plug it in
Or you
outside.
drape the EVSE charging cable underneath or through the man door of the garage or under the garage door and close it, and that's how you charge it. So
That's
so
right. That's
so
right. Or
maybe
you
that's
just,
something that panel 2 or panel 12 will look at for
yeah.
the
Well,
upcoming cycle.
I'll tell you what though, I think that to your point, there is a task group that was appointed by Standards Council, and that task group is trying to address the GFCI, the shock protection, and the issues because they did expand and they did add clarity, but it was rejected by Standards Council. It went through, it was rejected at the floor. We had some good language. The only problem I had with that language was I did not have a provision to be able to use a Class C GFCI for a hardwired it at 240 volts, right? A hardwired EVSE, but I had it for 480 volt applications. So that was my only issue, but that it passed the floor because they were NITMAMs, but then Standards Council basically sent it all back to the 2026, 2023 language, which is basically what we just read earlier. And so that they created the task group. So I believe they're going to try to work on what do they call it, a TIA, temporary interim amendment. Um, but honestly, I think it is so, this discussion point is so charged uh, politically and technically charged that I'm not sure they'll get what they need or what they think they want to get done in a TIA because you need, the threshold goes up. You need what, 3/4 of the code panels now members to accept that language. So whatever language they come up with, it better be doggone good and address all the concerns.
Well, and I
But
think what you're going to see this cycle, especially with related to the EVSE. A lot of the smaller charging equipment manufacturers are going to be participating in the public input and public comment process.
Yeah.
I think that there was a lot folks that during the 26 as these rules developed, the folks that are involved in that, manufacturers that are involved in that sit on code panel 12 were involved, but we didn't see a lot of public input or public comments from outside of that world, right? So I think that what we'll end up with, instead of so many coming to light at the appeal process, right, throughout or in the technical meeting and the appeal process, I think we're gonna try to address a lot of these issues on the front end or during the actual NEC early stage development, technical code panel meeting development stages as well.
Yeah, I agree. So look forward to a lot of more dialogue on GFCI protection of outlets and all that jazz.
Did we beat the GFCI stuff to death for
I
today?
think I think for this first kickoff of the 2026, it's 2026? Is it? Yeah, it's
All year,
2026. All
all
year.
year.
I keep forgetting what year it is. So for the first one for 2026, I think I'm going to give us both a big pat on the back.
Yeah, solid B plus effort today, Tom.
Solid. I love it. I love it. Beautiful. Well, Kyle, it's
Good
always
deal.
good talking to you. Good deal. Thanks to everybody out there who's watching and will be watching as we move forward. Keep your eyes open to the channel for Thursdays at 12. We are going
Yep.
to be much more diligent this year and get out there as often and as we can. So follow the channel, subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified when we go live.
And we'll get this recording up on the NECA podcast network as well, so folks can listen
Perfect.
to it at their leisure if they're not able to catch it live.
That sounds
As always,
perfect.
Tom, appreciate it. Thanks
Thank you, sir.
for getting this all set up and looking forward to the next one.
Same here. Thanks, Kyle. Take care.